And you know, it has to do with you know, obviously something physically in the air that is modified by a day-night difference, which would indicate something skywave in nature. And also, when airplanes would fly through, it would disturb the medium. Airplane would fly through, and the signal strength would start fluttering. Usually, you know, very, very quick, and then as time passed, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, that rate of flutter starts getting slower, and the excursions of the signal from less to more become greater. And at times, sometimes it would be 5 or 6 lights hotter than what the signal was prior to the plane flying. So, and you know, that plane was probably at what, 10,000 feet? So obviously a lot of the signal strength is occurring at much higher altitudes than what one would think for, you know, a quote ground wave signal.
You're right, and that's about right on the airplane. And if you it was doing that, and the plane was, your signal that you're receiving is north to south, you know, is north of you, let's say, and that plane is going north to south, it's gonna, you know, do exactly that. For quite a while, it'll do that, especially if it's bouncing off the ionosphere. There's no rhyme or reason for you know, it just happens. When that band's open, it's wild. The old 11-meter days years ago, my gosh, when that band was open, geez, Pete, I'd talk into Florida all the time with a 3-element beam, just on a modest tower, and the band, when it's open, 1,000 miles easily.
Roger, Roger, yeah. And the frequency, was that it was on 11 meters, Roger? And, you know, you wouldn't expect, you know, a UHF, or no, well, let's not talk about UHF. I usually don't talk about UHF because that takes twice the power to go half as far. But VHF, particularly, you know, 150 megs or below in there, really is outstanding, you know.
K8SCHTL123V67 repeater.
The meter days years ago, I mean, like 40 years ago, when that was, a lot of people had 11-meter stuff with amplifiers and the big antennas and stuff around here. And we're kind of got to kind of get some altitude here. It would sail right over the Kentucky hills. We're 5 miles east of Cincinnati here, and we had a tower up and all that, and the rotor and the beam, and it on a good night it would really go down into Texas and all the southern states down there. When the band's open, it's open. It was amazing. And you really didn't need an amplifier. You could do pretty good on 5 watts, but if you had 100 watts or more, shoot, it was just a piece of cake to get into Florida.
Roger, Roger. Are you pretty familiar with the various repeaters up in your area?
Really? This one here is a popular one, though. This one really gets out. It was obviously, my gosh, you're full quieting now. Oh, which one are you thinking about?
I've got one on my list that's coming back right now. It's giving me a peg out, and that's 145-470. No PL. I've got 145-470.
Know where that is. Let me try it once to see if I can hit 145-470. Hold on a second.
This is Kilo Charlie 9, Victor Kilo Victor, 3 miles west of Louisville. Hey, we are doing some radio experimenting this morning on VHF, checking out some frequencies up around Cincinnati.
That was 145,470 you were talking about?
Roger, Roger. Yeah, I think that it's somewhere between me and you, and I'm not sure how, how close to Cincinnati that might be, or how close it might be to me. I assume you got no response.
I can't hit it at all. I've only got 10 watts here. I've got a little 5/8 wave or something up on the side of the tower for this, but I'm not hitting it at all. I have no idea. I've never heard that repeater.
Oh, roger that. Roger that. That's what I figured. It's somewhere between you and I. And I'm trying to do a QSO with a station in Cincinnati regards a Kids Day function that they had, and we've been trying to find some conditions and time to do it on his travels to and from work, and haven't been able to coincide with Mother Nature on that. He had to go on vacation or something Thursday and Friday, but Wednesday morning, if he had made his schedule, we had good conditions, but I don't know, he got stolen by gypsies or something. We were anticipating doing that on 145,390, which is, I get pretty good back from that. And then there was but I get a better signal off 146,880, and it's got a long hang time, so I can get my 7 elements in order, with that longer hang time.
That's a hot repeater. That gets out too really good. That's 6.8. Yeah, that's a good one. Have you ever been up to the Voice of America up there in Mason, to the museum and the ham shack up there?
Negative. But I guess that 143. I'm sorry, it's my number. That 143,390. That's part of the VOA, isn't it?
Maybe. That's a pretty hot repeater. That's got some coverage too. Yeah, the VOA Park, I was up there not too long ago, and a friend of mine wanted to see it. He actually wanted to, he's from Louisville also, he wanted to see the WLW's tower up there. That Blaunox big monster vertical they've got up there. And so we went by that, and he just was overwhelmed by the magnitude of that antenna. That's just an incredible sight up there. So we just shot on over to the VOA Park over there, and they had a little movie. It was kind of nice, talking about the old days, and they got a real nice broadcasting museum of stuff in there and vintage equipment. And they got a real neat ham shack up there too.
Roger. That WLW really has a history for setting records in broadcasting. Been around a long time, and obviously the power deal that they were trying to use, 500,000 watts using the 50 kW as a driver for the big boy. I admire explorers and experimenters.
I've got a broadcast news magazine RCA put out since they built the final of that. And the night that the president, Hoover, I think it was, he was the one who turned that on the air. And they actually ran that thing up for a little test. They got it up to 800,000 and 100% modulation just for a little short burst, just to play with it and show it off. That was pretty incredible. Unbelievable.
Roger. Now the question is, were they modulating the driver and just linear amplifying the whole thing up to 500 kW, or were they actually plate modulating at the 500 kW level?
Modulating that. That's pretty impressive.
They were actually modulating the 500,000?
As far as the schematic I've seen of it, yes, they were. And that was an engineering feat to do that. And that originally had all mercury vapor rectifier tubes and motor generators running DC on the filaments of those tubes at a zillion amps. Then later on, they swapped out the tubes for three-phase AC filament tubes in that final. That thing was an engineering feat. Good gosh, to just have that working an hour, you know, because it had a spray pond outside. It had miles of PRX tubing to take the plate voltage off the cooling water. It was just an unbelievable feat. I've been up there and seen it. A lot of the parts are still up in there, and the modulation transformer is enormous in the basement of the place.
Roger. Well, at least they had the forethought of putting it where it would probably wind up due to the weight. Put it in the basement, and then all you have to worry about is a China syndrome meltdown, as opposed to the weight actually going through the flooring to the basement. So, but you know, they always said when you're around freaky electronics, high power stuff, you'll always keep one hand in your pocket. Never have both hands available to get tied up into things. And I noticed in one of the videos, there was one of the engineers there giving a dissertation about the 500 kW transmitter, and he was right there in the electronics, and I noticed he did have this strange look on his face, and he did have one hand in his pocket.
The RF burn alone on that thing would be just tremendous. Yeah, that's pretty unbelievable. I've got some original photos of Pal Crosley out at the antenna site, arcing that thing over, and it's got a big lightning arrestor gap, and he's got kind of a wire hooked to ground and pulling an arc off that thing. It's pretty incredible. Good Lord.
K8ZUN repeater. PL123.
And this is KC9VKV, 3 miles west of Louisville, getting 7 lights back off this repeater right now.
Yeah, you sound like you're in Cincinnati here. Kids are really doing good.
Roger. It's very unusual that it would be this hot. I wish there's another frequency. Trying to think of what the number of that thing is. Let me look just a second here. You might be able to help me on that one. Somewhere between where I was and here. I have notes, but it would take me years. I don't have a computerized filing system for all my notes. They're handwritten, and I have just one stack that's about 3 inches high, which has all my cheat sheets and stuff in it. And then I have a notebook, currently, a current notebook that's about an inch thick, and I'm about 2/3 through it. So somewhere in all that, there are notes about this other this other frequency up that way.
Gotcha. By the way, are you going to go to the Indianapolis Hamfest next weekend?
I believe so. I'm at the mercy of my Elmer, who is a strange situation. He is younger than I am. Usually it's the other way around, but he is younger, and so we have gone up the past 2 years to it. And I never know at the last minute what the status is, on that one or anyone. So, sometimes he decides, and sometimes he doesn't, which is all right with me because I find it interesting, and I just I mean, he spends thousands of dollars. One time we were at this Hempfest, in the Louisville Hempfest, which they hold in Shepherdsville. It's strange. The Louisville Hempfest keeps getting further out of town as time goes by. Pretty soon we'll have the Louisville Hempfest in Bowling Green, I guess, or something like that. But he did purchase this. I guess it was a linear amplifier, and he pulled his trailer up to the back of this other guy's trailer, and it took 4 guys to make the transition with this piece of equipment from one trailer to the other. And I think the numbers were around three grand or something like that. And I had $17 left over, and he had to borrow that to make the deal.
Wonder what kind of amplifier it was. It was a big Henry or something. He picked up, wow, big Collins or something. Good lordy. Yeah, those cost what they cost to build, with this day and age with our dollar. Just the plate transformer alone in those great big amplifiers is just a fortune. And the finals and all, good God, to build something like that this day and age. It's hard to get the high voltage parts, special transmitting caps and things like that to build those. That's not an easy thing anymore. Years and years and years ago, it wasn't too bad. But there's only a few companies making that high voltage stuff. And years ago, I used to go to the Louisville Ham Fest when it was right down at the convention center, right in near town. It was all indoors. Did you go then by chance?
No, I just I've only been a ham for about probably 5 years, 6 years, somewhere in there. So I just have been aboard since they've been moving the Hemfest south. Like I say, I'm not sure exactly where it's going to end up. It seems to be, Shepherdsville, gosh, that's 20 miles or something like that. That's pretty far out for, a thing that's still called the Louisville Hemfest.
Right. And since, the Dayton Ham Fest now, that was the big one, largest ham fest that I know of in the world. For years and years and years I've gone to that. And this is the first year it's not been at Hare Arena. It's over what is that called over there? Xenia, at the fairgrounds. And they did a really good job on it this year for the first time. I give them high marks. Even though there was some rain and there's some mud in the fields where a lot of the flea market was, but that was not their fault at all. But it was a really good ham fest this year, I thought, for the first time in a new location.
Roger. Now that was in the field. They were using like pickup trucks and dropped the gate down and was selling right off the truck.
Set up and things. I mean, so they got a big enough facility. I was kind of questioning if it was going to be large enough, but it looks like it's going to be able to handle, the amount. It's got a lot of buildings. It was at their fairgrounds up there, and it's a very new complex. It was really nice. They had a lot of good food vendors and things. It was well done. For the first year, I think they've got a 3-year contract for this, and it looks like that's going to be a good place. They were toying around a few years ago with taking it up to the Ohio State Fair, which would be a much further drive for me, but I surely would have gone. that facility would have been plenty big. Absolutely plenty of parking and all to go. That was way bigger than the Xenia fairgrounds. It really would be an overkill, but what's it matter? But what they did was really good, and they still call it the Dayton Ham Fest.
Roger that. Well, I think it's nice when things are fairly tight. I mean, if you got too much room and it just doesn't, it's I don't know, it's too strung out. I like it when you've got a crowd around you, and you're just it's kind of like one of those open air markets. You just going through and you're seeing people that that you have talked to for a long time and have never met or haven't seen in a long time. So it's really nice when it's fairly full, Roger.
Yeah, it was a good ham fest, and I kind of wondered if they were going to pull it off, and they surely did. It was really, really well done for the first year. I was tickled to death. And we did have a little rain, but other than that, my gosh, the tally was at least 35,000 people showed up to that. That's pretty good.
Roger. And I guess when you have a venue of that size, the participation of the commercial manufacturers, ham radio manufacturers and devices and all that, they turn out in pretty large numbers, which makes it even more interesting.
The major manufacturers were up there, and they were really set up nice inside, so they don't have to worry about the weather. And they did a really good job with it this year for the first year. It was, I had my doubts, but they pulled it off. It was really well done. And the access in and out of the place for traffic, the time I got there, I didn't have any wait getting into park. I mean, I heard there were some people that had long waits. But when I rolled in there, it was just pulled almost right in the place. I didn't have to wait for a mile. Dayton, over the years, you could get backed up on Needmore Road for an hour, getting in the place. There really wasn't a lot of access to get in there. There was only like 2 or 3 major roads to get you into the Hare Arena there. And this, I kind of had my doubts if I was going to be backed up, but no wait for me. It worked out really well. I only went up one day. I didn't make it Sunday. I just went up Saturday, and it was a good show this year. And the fellow that came up from Louisville to see it, he'd never been to one, and he really liked it. We're going up to Indy this week now. We're going to go up Saturday. I hope, Indy's a pretty darn good ham fest. That's a good show.
K8ZUN, repeater 40HKYIN, PL123.
Roger. Yeah, I usually go around about 2 or 3 times in 4 hours or so. That we're there 4 or 5 hours, and I really enjoy the whole thing. I mean, it's a nice mixture there of it's just amazing what parts and pieces hams have that they will bring to when they clean out their ham shack. That stuff probably is destined for Indianapolis, and so they bring everything, and with the first time through, you just kind of take note of who's got what and where, and you may or may not make an offer on it, but whatever offer it is, by the 4th time you go through, you will offer half as much, and the guy might say yes, because he don't want to take it home.
Hate to see any electronic parts, thrown away. guys are hoarders like I am. I don't throw anything out unless it's absolutely a goner. Because I just know. I've been fiddling electronics all my life, and I know how expensive the parts were. My gosh. I've been tinkering on electronics since grade school. Those parts just weren't around. And if they were around, you really had to pay. The one place that was really neat over the years was Fair Radio up in Lima. I used to love to go up there. I haven't been up there in years. And they had a lot of war surplus. They had a lot of Collins R390s. They had all kinds of stuff up there. And I don't know how much of that real early surplus stuff they're getting anymore. They had a really great newsletter, flyer catalog for their parts, tubes, and all kinds of stuff. But the stuff, it was just always expensive. Just cost what it cost.
Roger. Well, I started off with totes. Putting stuff, well, first off, it goes on the floor. And if you're lucky, you have a little traverse way from the door to your radio room, or to your radio table, actually. It might be 1.5 foot wide, stuff on either side. And so then when you clean up, you just throw all this stuff in a tote. And there you go, and so then after you do 3 or 4 totes, then you have a serious problem, because it's kind of like storing atomic used fusion energy. They have a problem with what do you do with the quote waste, so then like in Chernobyl, not Chernobyl, but the Japanese problem, they put all that stuff up in the roof, up in the attic, and of course when they had those explosions, all of that used fusion material went into the sky 30,000 feet, and we were dodging it. But anyway, after you go through the tote stage, then I have found garbage cans, Rubbermaid garbage cans, are tremendous. You can put about 1.5 totes in a garbage can, put the lid on it, put it outside, and it will be perfect forever. Those Rubbermaids don't leak. I had a table drill press in one of those Rubbermaids for 30 years. I just had a little tarp over it inside the Rubbermaid, and for 30 years, man, it's been just perfect, Roger.
Mine swears by totes. He's got so much stuff stored in them. Yeah, they work out good. And in a garbage can, if it's in good shape, it'll be fine. That's a good way to go. Yeah, I've got so many parts and things I've collected over the years. My gosh, I've got a ham fest of my own. I've got a couple of buildings full of stuff. I mean, it just goes on and on. But it doesn't, it's just money sitting there. You can just look at it, or have it in the bank, but if you like things and can work on them and all, shoot, I'm running an antique IC211 or all mode 10-watt base with a built-in power supply is what I'm talking right on now, and this thing just runs and runs and runs.
Roger. Well, it sounds perfect. No hum or anything, and on frequency, modulation's perfect. So, when you're running numbers like that, why change anything? It's just perfect. I'm like I say, talking on this Yaesu 2900, and I really got spoiled, man. My Elmer directed me to this radio, and before then I'd been running Motorola stuff, Max Tracks and Meritrax and Little Amsy Divies, and I really am a radio explorer. And the problem with Max Tracks and Meritrax is that I would have to send them out to be programmed, and by the time they came back, I had almost forgotten about what I was doing as far as the frequencies, you know. So with this Yaesu 2900, it's just such a pleasure. You know, in 15 seconds you can crank in a frequency and a PL. And I went exploring one time in the southeast direction for about 3 months. And, you know, I was cranking in numbers as I went, you know, and I wound up in Mount Mitchell. That's the furthest I've gone yet in that direction. That's about 400 miles, a little over 400 miles. And I've arrived at that location probably about 8 times now. They know me by my first name. When they come in, they say, "Oh, there's Jim coming in. Hello," and it's really interesting. Like I say, the radio makes all the difference, you know. And with 75 watts out, I'm giving usually much better than I'm getting. Roger, Roger.
Good, 75 watts is some power there. Yeah, it's working great tonight. I can't hardly believe it. You're hitting it as solid as you are, just no fading at all. It's just quiet. It's really amazing. I wouldn't have thought you'd be 5 miles from the repeater. It's a signal. There's a lot of guys that can't hit it that live real close. But, yeah, it's working good. And Mount Mitchell, where in the world is that? What's its elevation?
It's towards Asheville, North Carolina, and it's in the mountain range there. It's one of the tallest areas in North America on this side of the whatever, I don't know, but it's 6,600 feet. You know, so the next stop after that is tracking a satellite, I guess. 6,600 feet. That's quite an altitude for repeater.
Doing really good. If you're getting 400 miles, that's pretty amazing. It'll do it. You know, with that kind of altitude, my gosh. Yeah. They probably got a really good rig on there too. You know, with a great antenna and a really good repeater up there, shoot with good ears. My gosh. Years ago, there was a lot of repeater systems were all linked. They had multiple receive sites and all kinds of stuff, and there was a FARA, I think, was one of the linked systems years ago, and shoot, that thing had coverage out the wazoo.
Roger, Roger. There are some nets, VHF nets and UHF nets that have multiple repeaters tied to them around here in Salem, Indiana. They're part of the Win9 system, and that system goes all the way up to Indianapolis and takes a left, and you go maybe 200 or 300 miles west of Indianapolis, and then there's on the other side of the state, down on this side, on the south side of Indiana, it goes towards Evansville and around through there. There's a repeater. I never can remember what the name of it is, but it's like called Dry Gulch or something like that. Fort Where Am I, or somewhere, but that thing is, you know, a gateway right on into Evansville. It's really, really nice. And then down south, around Gallatin, Tennessee, you have a group called Shout South, and that goes all the way from, I think, Bowling Green down to Huntsville, Alabama. Not necessarily continuous coverage, I mean, as far as overlapping signals, but a lot of repeaters are tied together there. I have a page on YouTube called QSO-VLOG, and what that is a bunch of I have 55 segments now. They're dedicated. That is dedicated pretty much to amateur radio. That's part of my YouTube page. I have 550 pages called Jim Ferguson's Radio Story, which basically celebrates 50 years of commercial broadcasting. And the QSO-VLOG is now part of that. We started that about the middle of last year. And just pretty recently we did a rolling 280-mile VHF QSO from Gallatin, Tennessee, up to Indianapolis. 18-wheeler was traveling through, and that was a 280-mile rolling QSO, three and a half hours, Roger.
Repeater, timeout, cancel.
Sorry about that.
Out in it, you were right about where the 50 years of whatever is about where it timed out at.
Roger. Well, we just recently did a rolling QSO, 280-mile rolling QSO from Gallatin, Tennessee, up to Indianapolis with an 18-wheeler, just overlapping repeaters, Roger.
Have you ever been down to Tennessee? And there is a little jamboree thing going on the 20th. It's Storybook Farms or something down there in Jonesboro or something, Tennessee. It's kind of a little tailgate ham fest. They got like 35 acres on this property here, and it's going to be for the Central Electronics equipment and a lot of vintage equipment. They've got little seminars and all kinds of stuff going on. You ever been to that by chance?
No, but it sounds interesting. You say it's in Jonesboro?
To go, because I like Central Electronics equipment. That was really the Cadillac of its day. Back in the 50s, there wasn't really anything that would beat that stuff. They made a transmitter, model number 100V, and that was superseded by a 200V. And it was like the Rolls Royce of amateur radio transmitters. It was the cat's meow. It was a no-tune transmitter. It was very unique in design. It was just very expensive. Central Electronics was a division at one time of Zenith, and it was all built up in Chicago. And this stuff was just insanely built. The build quality was crazy, and it was no tune. It was so unique. It used 6550 audio output tubes as the PA amplifier tubes in those, and they were ultralinear response tubes. And the thing was just an insane transmitter. It just beat Collins all to death. It took Collins a while to catch up with that thing.
Roger. Well, the question would be, without tuning, I wonder how they kept the sidebands from becoming a problem as they approached 100%, you know? How did they get work around the splatter without being able to peak the frequency, Roger?
Wideband couplers were pretty amazing. It was pretty intense engineering to build that thing. And it had a built-in oscilloscope in it too, so you could keep an eye on your modulation, that you weren't going to splatter the thing. It was an engineering feat of its day to build a wideband transmitter like that. It was 100 watt. And they built a no-tune 600 watt linear that took almost no drive. It was very efficient on the front end. It took in, I think, 20 watts to put out 600. It was really unique too. It was built back in the 50s also, and weighs 100 pounds. It's a beast, and it uses a 813 RF final tube in there, and it's got all kinds of screen regulation, and it's got some very advanced circuitry in the thing to be clean and no tune. You just set the band and you go. It's pretty neat. But it uses that 813, which is RCA developed around the war time, right after the war, I think, and it'll put out, the tube's rated at 650 watts, just one single tube, glass tube. Pretty amazing, and it's not a triode, so you got some gain there.
Wow, quite interesting. KC9VKV, and I didn't catch your call sign or name.
KC8ZUN, Kilo Charlie 8 Zulu Uniform November. And I always liked their stuff. That company was the pioneer of single sideband. They made it happen. General Electric actually was I think the first to have circuits printed in like some of the QSDs and things that got people's interest going. Then Central Electronics made it happen. They had incredible engineering. They had some top-notch guys work out the math to make it work. Because sideband is just not something that you're going to accidentally put something together and make work. They had MIT guys calculate, all kinds of the math, and it's pretty neat.
Roger, Roger. Well, when you're talking about that no-tune stuff, brings to mind how convenient and usable that would be for somebody that was sight challenged, somebody that may be blind or whatever, to be able to operate a radio without having to tune it. Because it's really a trick for a blind person to do that, I'm sure. So that would be just a godsend for somebody like that, Roger.
The tree was pretty advanced, and I mean, it had indicators on it, and for mismatch, and it'd have a light that would come on, telling you that you were, your antenna wasn't right. And their 600L linear was so far advanced. It had a band switch, of course, that didn't automatically tune that far. You just set it and forget it, and it actually had an option which made it really slick if you were really into the hobby. On the end of the band switch, you could buy up an option that would hook on the end of the band switch that was an antenna switch. So it was 6 bands, and it would automatically switch the proper antenna for the band automatically. I mean, the stuff was just way over-engineered for its time, and that was in 56, I think, was when that amplifier hit the market. But it was god-awful, almost $1,000 in 56, so they didn't sell a whole lot of them.
Roger, Roger. I'm not sure I got your call correct. KC8, and then ON. I didn't catch the rest. Could you give me that phonetically again?
Kilo Charlie 8 Zulu Uniform November.
Roger, Roger. And the name again?
I'm 5 miles east of Cincinnati here.
Roger, Roger. And the name? I didn't catch the name either.
Bill.
Bill, B-I-L, Bill, or Will. I thought it was Bill.
And that equipment, if you get into it, that stuff was so... their first transmitters were the 10, Model 10. Then they had one that was a Model 20. And they actually were crystal controlled, but then you could make a VFO on it, and they were very advanced for their day. They were not you still had a tuned nose, and the VFO was interesting. They used it was a hodgepodge. They actually used surplus 458 transmitters that were built by Western Electric for the Second World War. They made a retrofit kit to use this transmitter as the VFO for their transmitter. They were really engineering marvel. The company had all kinds of things that they put on the market. They had audio compressors, and they had they were kits and all kinds of little accessories and things. They were just the forerunner of the whole amateur radio sideband trip.
K8ZUN repeater TL123.
Roger, Roger. Well, I've got my first radio, as I was getting ready to take my technician's license, or test. I was on the internet, and I saw this guy had a Drake TR4C for sale. And the second I seen that radio, boy, I just fell in love with it. I just knew what all the knobs did, and I said, that's my radio, But he had it for sale, but he never would respond to me. I guess he already had sold it. And I tried to get a hold of him 3 or 4 times about that radio, but he never responded. So I went ahead and took my test, and as I was leaving after I passed the test, I stopped at the door and turned around and asked the examining engineers if anybody knew where I might be able to find a Drake TR4C. And one of the engineers said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal you can't refuse. I've got one I'll give to you. And he did. It was had been in storage for about 10 years. And he brought it over, and in the next 3 days we brought it up real slow, and it's been working like a champ, and it's still on the table, and I still use it every couple of months or so just to make sure it's still running. And it's doing its design says it's doing 308 watts or thereabouts. I'm sure that's peak to peak. But it's still doing about 180 watts now, peak to peak. Still, those tubes are probably as tired as I am, but they keep on keeping on. The only thing with that radio, it's 42 years old, 1975, I think, run through there, and the 10-meter band is what I used that radio for the first year that I was in amateur radio. And, 10 meters in 1975 was not the easiest thing to put a VFO on, and that Drake TR4C is strictly a VFO all the way. So it would take about a half hour to stabilize, which I never could wait for that long. I would always fire it up and start using it and just play catch-up with it, Roger, as far as tuning.
Repeater, timeout, cancel.
Oh, I did it again.
When you said your rig was 42 years old, and Drake equipment was really well built, and it lasts forever if you treat it right. And they've made a lot of those 4Cs. The Drake twins, all that stuff. My gosh, they made so much of that gear, and it was so well built, and it lasts forever.
Yeah, Roger. It's just a treasure. When we finally got it fired up. Skip had been rolling forever, and Jerry, the guy that had given it to me, had left, and I was getting ready to go on and give it the full 110 volts and start transmitting, and so I gave it the full 110. It held in there, and I was hearing this skip, and I went to start to use it and plug the mic in, and lo and behold, they had a military stereo jack for the mic input. It wasn't a normal quarter-inch, and I'm sitting there with a a stereo quarter-inch jack, can't get it in the hole, and all the skips going. I was going crazy, So I said, well, this is the first modification. So I went down to Radio Shack and got me a stereo jack, came back and rewired it, sucker, and I was on the air.
Good, yeah, they're well built. R.L. Drake made all kinds of stuff over the years, and they got in later in the game. The R8 receiver, that was one of their later projects. Those were excellent. And they made satellite, C-band satellite receivers and all kinds of stuff up at Drake. They were in Miamisburg, Ohio, I think. They made all kinds of stuff over the years. It's a shame they're out of the amateur radio equipment league anymore. It'd be hard to. I think Ten-Tech's gone now. I'm not 100% sure. I heard rumblings that they were bought out and they're gone. Dentron was another manufacturer of amplifiers and tuners and all, and they're long gone. They were up in Ohio, which is a shame. That was all hand-built, well-built stuff. Yeah, it's really hard to make money with that American-made gear. ICOM and Yaesu, they got cheap labor. They can put it together. Over here, this country, we got to pay real money to get it assembled.
Roger that. Roger that. Well, listen, Bill, I really have enjoyed the QSO, and incidentally, I have the QSO-VLOG page on YouTube, and I'm doing a video on this tonight, if you might be interested in checking it out. Very, very lovely QSO, and about many, many interesting subjects, I think. If you go to YouTube and do a call letter search, Kilo Charlie 9 Victor Kilo Victor, that will bring up the QSO-VLOGs. And there is one, you'll probably see a thumbnail of my bicycle right at the top of the page, and just below that there's a list program that usually has, well, it has 55 now, and I'll put this one, it'll be 56 segments of all different kinds of topics that you might find interesting. Roger, Roger?
Okay, try your call one more time. Let me write it down.
Roger, Roger. It's Kilo Charlie 9 Victor Kilo Victor. Kilo Charlie 9 Victor Kilo Victor. Roger. And if you, like I say, if you just go to YouTube and do a call letter search, that'll bring up the QSO-VLOG segments. I do have 500 other segments in my main page called Jim Ferguson's Radio Story. A bunch of documentaries and specials and full music concerts that I produced over 50 years, Roger.
I'll have to check it out. Yeah, it's 5:12 in the morning. My gosh, I'm gonna have to call it quits here. It's been great talking with you, man. And your signal is unbelievable getting in here. It sounds great.
Roger, thank you so very much, and I enjoyed it also. So maybe, do you usually hang out on this frequency?
This pretty often, yeah. This is a good one. This thing gets out.
146, 670, and I guess the PL is 123, is that Roger?
23. As far as I know, I think that's the tone. Let me flip the tone off and see if it still has staff tone. It's got to be there, yeah. It's required.
Roger, Roger. So, yeah, all that Cincinnati stuff is pretty much 123, I think. Roger, Roger. Well, Bill, say 3's up that way, and you enjoy the rest of the morning, sir. Get some rest, and we may track you down on this frequency later on down the road, Roger.
Yeah, take care, and it's been nice talking with you there. And yeah, I monitor this a lot, so if I hear you on, I'll jump in. And yeah, I didn't ever dream that you were in Louisville, because your signal is absolutely almost 100% quiet right now. It's unbelievable.
Roger, Roger. I'm still getting 6 lights back, so the gods are with us. So I'll say 3's up that way. Incidentally, this is Jim, Juliet, India Mike down in Louisville.
I'm out of here too. KC8ZUN clear.
KC9VKV, 3 miles west of Louisville. We're clear.